For more audio, visit zoomdar.bandcamp.com and check below the video for up-to-date links and other information on the recordings. Hi there, today I'm trying a new feature on the channel called How I Wrote This Song, and the song which I'm going to be discussing today is called Open the Door. I'm going to take you through the process of writing the song, which started about a year ago. So a lot of the time when I'm writing a song, I start with my digital recorder and I just hit record on here and I start playing something. So what I'm going to do is I'll play back some of the original demo from about a year ago.
Who is painted by the river bank? Who chooses the blues? Who is sleeping by the river bank? Who is waiting for you? I'd like to come in. Will you open the door? I'd like to come in. Will you help me ashore? Who is taking out the old canoe? Who is casting a line? Who is cutting the worms in two? Who is taking their time? I'd like to come in. Will you open the door? I'd like to come in. Will you help me ashore?
So the original demo was about 11 minutes long, and it started off with me just messing around with the C# minor chord. And then I improvised some lyrics around that, and whatever came out just came out. And so what I was thinking about at the time, well, here, let me play one of the lines I came up with.
Who's been sleeping by the river bank? Who chooses the blues? Who's been sleeping by the river bank? Who's been waiting for you? I'd like to come in. Will you open the door? Like to come in. Will you help me ashore?
What I was thinking when I came up with those lines, who's been sleeping by the riverbank, who chooses the blues? I'd recently seen this film about Van Gogh called Loving Vincent, which is a really beautiful looking film. Every frame of the film was painted in his style, and one of the things that he really liked to do was to go to a riverbank and to paint by the riverbank. And so it kind of started off asking a question of, you know, who's been painting by the riverbank, who's choosing the blues? And when I was thinking, I was also thinking about my grandfather who used to like to fish on a lake, and he's gone now. So it was kind of like, some of what I was thinking is, who's doing that now that he's gone? And then the next line was, I'd like to come in. Will you open the door? I'd like to come in. Will you help me ashore? So I always like that as a chorus, like the way the chords sound. You can see I've got a capo on the 4th fret, and the way that the chords ring out, and then the voicings on the guitar with the capo on the 4th fret is really nice. And that question is sort of like some of it is, I'd like to come in, so you might be thinking of the lake or the water. I'd like to come into the lake or the water. Some of it is in the country house that my grandfather had. I was kind of thinking of, you know, there was this very rickety old door that would make this particular sound would open it. So I was thinking of it, and some of what I was thinking of is sort of the space between being alive and being dead, and how you keep people who are close to you in your heart and in your memory, but you can't actually physically interact in the same way, but there's still a strong personal connection. And then there's another verse that I started to do some work on, but I didn't quite have right. So that was this verse here, which is, who's been paddling out the old canoe? Who's been casting a line? Who's been cutting the worms in two? Are they your hands or mine? Now, I didn't have all those lyrics when I was doing the demo. I had most of them. This is something that I wrote out by hand many months later. So one of the weaknesses of the original demo was that the verse lyrics just weren't strong enough, in my opinion. I was improvising stuff, and not everything I was doing worked. So it needed some construction. It needed some time to actually like properly work out the verse lyrics. So this was an attempt at that. This was many months later. This might have been in November. So what I started to do was I wrote out by hand some of the lyrics that I liked from that original 11-minute demo. And then I started to play around with the order of the lines. And eventually I came up with that second verse, which I just read. And as I developed the song, what I was asking in that verse was more, as I guess I should say, as I continued to write the song, I sort of forgot about the Van Gogh stuff, and it became more about my grandfather. And so now that he's gone, I was thinking, who's been taking out the old canoe? Used to have a canoe in the country. Who's been casting a line? Used to love fishing. He's not fishing anymore. Who's been cutting the worms in two? Are they your hands or mine? And what I was trying to imply with the last line is, I come from him. So if I was there in the country and I was doing all those things, is it me that's doing them, or is it a part of him in a way, since I partially come from him? So that's what I had, and really the toughest part of doing this song was the verse lyrics. So I sat down a few other times after that. I really tried to bang them out, and nothing was coming. I still had the verse lyrics that I had in the original version, which were, who's sleeping by the riverbank, who chooses the blues, who's painting by the riverbank, who is waiting for you. I had some variations on that. And then I think somewhere in January, I hit on it. I went to sleep one night, and right as I was going to sleep, I just got this flurry of ideas. And so I wrote down some of the lyric ideas on whatever I had around. So this is newspaper, but I had some little note paper as well. And one of the lyrical themes I started to explore in this set of lyrics had to do with the idea of there being a ghost at the lake. And I was talking about some urban versus rural stuff. And none of that ended up making it into the song, but I ended up, I think, hitting on something that helped me to develop it in the direction that it ultimately went in. So from that point, when I was working on the lyrics, it was a lot more productive. And what I would do is I'd just sit down and I'd play it over and over and over again. And eventually I came up with these lyrics, which is pretty much what's in the finished version of the song. So the first verse, which talked about painting by the riverbank, changed to, took a trip to the country lake, hear your breath on the waves. Took a dip in the country lake, feel your blood in my veins. So I made it more about my grandfather. I got rid of the riverbank. I talked about the country lake. And I talked about this connection of, myself to him, blood in my veins. And I was trying to make a bit of a connection between the water and the water and the blood and that. So chorus I kept the same, second verse I kept the same. And then originally I was repeating the first verse again and using that as a third verse. And then I had a different outro, which I'll get to in a sec. And what I decided was, what I was doing was I was playing the song over and over again, playing around with the dynamics. So like, just gonna get my audio recorder here. So what I was doing at this stage was I set up my Zoom H6 on a tripod, and I was just playing the song over and over again. And when I say I was messing around with the dynamics, it was like stuff like, do I use a pick or not use a pick? Do I palm mute? Do I not palm mute? Do I do certain sections more gently and others more powerful? Certain lines, do I do them an octave above or do I do them an octave below? It was all that kind of stuff. And I felt really good playing and singing the song at that point. Like I was singing it well, it felt great to play. But when I would listen back to the takes, I found the song was boring. Like it wasn't interesting enough. Like it didn't have a rising action. It didn't hold my attention. So what I ended up doing was I cut out the third verse from the song, and instead I took the outro and I made the outro sort of an outro and sort of a third verse. And that picked up the pace of the song, and then it also made the verses more interesting because all three of them were different. And so the outro was, if the water's your blood, then the water's my blood. If the water's your blood, then the water's my blood. It doesn't really have a literal meaning, but I think you can kind of see mood-wise what I was going for. So that's basically how I wrote the song. And unfortunately, when I got to that stage, I was starting to have some problems with my wrist. You can kind of see the brace here. But just before that happened, I started to demo it on my H6. One thing, even though the song was working a lot better at that point, I wasn't happy with the demo recordings that I was making. And part of the issue, I think, was the XY mic capsule. So I wanted to have the dynamics vary a bit more in the song. And one issue with the XY is, like, if I wanted to lean in a little bit to change the character of my voice on the recording, it would just peak it. It wasn't a great choice for that. It's easy to set up. So what I did instead is I used a Shure SM57 and a 58, and I went to the trouble of actually setting them up on mic stands. And I recorded a bunch of takes like that, and I messed around with all the same stuff I was talking about, palm muting, and do I use a pick or not a pick, all that kind of stuff. And then as I was starting to get to the point where I was happy with it, that's when I started having the some of the wrist issues where I was going to have to wear a brace. So since I was so close to finishing the song at that point, I decided what I would do is I'd do a quick multi-track version. So I took one of those takes that I had done that was just intended to be a demo that I was going to send to a friend. And then I stuck that into Garageband. I did some simple effects to it, and then I did some basic multi-tracks. I think the multi-track version I came up with is only about 7 or 8 tracks. So there's maybe 3 or 4 guitar tracks, a bass track, a vocal track. Well, I mean, the original demo has a vocal and a rhythm guitar track on it. And that's it. And I think it turned out pretty well. So I'll do a separate video where I'm talking about the process of doing the multi-track recording. And my plans next for the song. I have a compilation that I'm working on that maybe be out in a couple of years. So I'm hoping to include the song on that. I might leave it how it is. It might be like a more of like a stripped back demo version of the song, or I might do some more work on it, do some more advanced production work on it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's the song, and that was the process of doing it. It took a long time.
Took a trip to the country lake. Hear your breath on